What is this team now? You were mentioning, are they the 1-6 team? Are they the 6-1 team? Truth is, they're probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and that's fair. And to Dan Campbell's point, my fear is these guys got a little taste of success and got comfortable. And Calvin Shepard addressed that
Hard
last
to
week.
argue.
He addressed it last week, said, listen, you guys are idiots if you think we're comfortable in here. But, if he's addressing it, it's obviously something that is in the back of his mind or in the front of his mind because he's seeing something that he hasn't normally seen out of this team. They're walking in the locker room a little more swag. They're joking around a little bit more during practice, not taking the ABCs as serious as they could. And that's my biggest fear. But it's also Dan Campbell's only coached negatively, right? He's only coached trying to get them up. He's never coached trying to keep them level. And that's a whole different ball game when you're dealing with success as you're dealing with failure. And my theory is Dan Campbell needs to learn how to deal with success as well as the rest of the Lions because it's so new to everybody. They don't know that, hey, even though we whooped ass last week, guess what? That doesn't matter come 12 o'clock Monday. We got to restart, go at the new opponent. It's a fresh week. And I know that's a lot of coach talk and locker room speak. You hear it, well, we're only focused week to week. We're only focused on the next team on the schedule. But you got to get locked into that mindset to where even if it is coach speak, that is your mental no matter what. Win or lose, we're on to the next one. And I don't think the Lions were on to the next one. I think they were looking ahead to Green Bay. I think they were looking ahead to Chicago and just kind of laying back on what they've already done instead of understanding that, like Neil Rule says, those guys in Carolina get paid too.
No doubt. And again, I go back to this. If they lose to Chicago this week, then we can have this whole conversation.
Double down. Right.
Then we can have this whole conversation of Dan Campbell and where this team is and all that stuff. I just think it's incredibly hard in the NFL to win 9 games in 10 opportunities.
It is.
I just think that's really hard. And you were kind of waiting. You didn't want to believe it, but you were kind of waiting for a dud to be thrown in there at some point, and that was the dud. It was clear this team was not ready to play. We talk in college football, and again, I know college and the NFL is different to a certain extent, but you talk about Nick Saban says in college, you can really only get up for 2 games a season. Like to where you're just 2 games you're going to be at your peak level. The Lions in the NFL, you're trying to get that every single week, and I just think that's an impossible thing to ask of a non-elite team. This team has been playing above their skis for probably 2 months. And everything has kind of come together for them. And they've hung on to the football, lost the turnover battle again.
Yeah.
And you just don't know how that works out if the Lions score a touchdown there and they go up 14-7. Instead, they fumble. Carolina marches down the field, and you flip 14 points. Instead of being up 14-7, you're down 14-7. And before you know it, the wheels come off. But I think where it's so frustrating, too, Stick, is each season is its own entity.
Yes.
We think that everything just goes on this linear track where year 1 you go 3-13-1, and then year 2 maybe you win 8 games, and then year 3 is the year that you compete for a division championship. I call BS on that. Not that it can't happen like that, but there's no guarantee it happens like that. Jared Goff could get hit by a bus on Woodward Avenue right now, and everything would be up in arms. We just don't know what's going to happen next year, let alone what's going to happen today or tomorrow. And I think when you have these opportunities, you've got to take advantage of them. If you look at the NFC right now, man, just get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And maybe my eyes are too big. Maybe my eyes are too big, but just get in the playoffs. And if you're watching right now on WoodwardSports.com or Fox2Detroit.com, we flashed up for you the NFL wildcard contenders, the Giants, Washington, Seattle, Detroit, and Green Bay. And obviously that Detroit-Green Bay game at the end of the season looms large. You need Washington and Seattle to lose once more. Will the Cowboys play anybody in Week 18? Washington, that's tough, man, because assume the Giants are in for a minute. Just assume the Giants are in. They got to lose both these games.
Yeah, they got to lose out to be
They got to lose out. Washington has to lose once more. You've got Deshaun Watson and the Browns. Can they show up at any point, maybe? And then do the Cowboys play anybody in that final game? We just don't know. Seattle, you've got some good news there. Mike White cleared to play today, so the Jets will get their quarterback back. And then the Rams stick. The great part about yesterday was that they showed a little life.
Yeah.
The bad part about yesterday
they showed a little life. Yeah, they're 5-10 now.
So if you need the Rams to beat Seattle, it looks like they're very capable of doing that. But just to I'll shut up in a minute here. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You were off Thursday and Friday,
yeah,
so I know you got a lot. You got a lot.
If you look at the NFC, I mean, Philadelphia with a hurt Jalen Hurts, no pun intended. Tampa Bay, division champion probably. Tom Brady. Minnesota, very beatable. Dallas, nobody's mistaken Dak Prescott for a guy that can't choke in the playoffs. In San Francisco, elite defense. They get to 20, game's over. They're probably stopping you. But we don't know about Brock Purdy in the playoffs. Maybe he's got the yips. I don't know. But what I'm saying is there is no uber perfect team that you can't beat on any given Sunday. So that is why if you have the opportunity to take advantage of a year like this, you got to grab it by the you-know-what and barge yourself into the playoffs. Barge down that door. Break down that door.
Yeah, when opportunity's in front of you, you got to seize it. And that's exactly what the Lions didn't do on Saturday. And, like going back to kind of what we were talking about a little bit ago, too, is I'm still trying to figure out why this happened to the Lions, right? And another scenario that plays out in my head is Lions aren't sneaking up on anybody now. People aren't taking the Lions as the laydowns anymore, right? So teams are going to get up to play us. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly, to me, what happened. Carolina saw something. They're like, all right, these guys are on a roll, but they're beatable. It's on paper. We've seen how to beat them. And that's another fear of mine is, the NFL, once it's on tape, how to beat a team, that tape goes around to every single team. And what do? They practice and they line up the exact same thing, line up the exact same plays. So in my head, the Lions are I'm not going to say in trouble, but I agree with you. If this doubles down into next week into Chicago, then we got some questions. Then we got some concerns. But if they can bounce back and use this loss as a motivator to understand, hey, we can't take any team lightly anymore, even though we're supposed to beat Chicago at home. We got to go in there like we're 30-point underdogs and nobody on the planet believes that we can win. Then the next week, we got to go take out the mythical Aaron Rodgers in the mythical Lambeau Field. They have to have that killer mindset at all times now and understand they're kind of the hunted, not the hunter anymore.
And I'm sitting here, thinking about this game against Chicago as well. I mean, Chicago doesn't want to win it. That's the bottom line. Chicago does not want to win this game as an organization. Now, the players, obviously, they're going to go out there and compete. Yeah. Players are going to go out there and compete. They're going to try to win, but the organization itself, they're not trying to win this game. And I think Dan Campbell, we have seen, if Dan Campbell can get his guys up to play when they're 1-6, Dan Campbell's going to get his guys up to play with a playoff spot on the line because there is no room for error anymore. You have given up all your room for error. You have 2 games left on the schedule, and you've got to win them both. And it starts this week with Chicago, a team that you barely beat on the road in Chicago, but a team you beat nonetheless. It is hard to beat a team twice in the same season, but Chicago, the players anyway, would love to ruin your season.
Let me ask you a question. Of the 3 games we had remaining going into this last weekend, if I was to tell you we were going to go 2-1 in those 3 games, which one would you have preferred to lose?
This one against Carolina.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's why I'm not sitting here freaking out.
That's why I'm not jumping off the bridge either. But, if you lose the game to the Packers at the end of the season, it's almost like losing 2 games. So you definitely got to win that game because you're fighting for a playoff position with them. Plus, screw Aaron Rodgers, right? You don't want to lose the in-division Bears. You don't want to give them any hope for next year, build momentum. If you had to go 2-1, this was the game you had to lose. But once again, it all falls back to now, how do you respond?
And again, Stick, I think you bring up a great point, too. In the final 3 games, if there was one to lose, I think it was this Carolina game, because you're not only fighting against the other teams on the schedule, you're also fighting a stigma.
Yes.
And we could talk about that. Can you imagine if the Lions are playing the Packers for a playoff spot in the last game of the season, with Green Bay out of it? I'm talking about a completely different scenario now.
Right.
And the Lions lost that final game of the season again to get into the playoffs. I mean, you are fighting that stigma as well. We can talk about that next. Are you welcoming this Green Bay situation? They're as hot as any team in the league right now, winners of 3 in a row, and that could be for a spot in the playoffs. Are you happy about it? Are you frightful of it? We'll talk about that next.